I would love to invite onto the stage the most fantastic panellists. We're going to have a session around parenting the future. Rachel, Fatu, would you please join me up here? All right, so this is Rachel Arthur, and Rachel is the Advocacy Lead for Sustainable Fashion at the United Nations Environment Programme. A very dear friend, known Rachel for a long time partners in crime, so pleased you could join us today.
Thanks.
And Fatu Jeng is the founder of Clean Earth Gambia, also just made it onto the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Woo! That's right. So, as I said, I think this session might be a little bit different, and it's been inspired by, well, actually it was inspired by many conversations I'd had with many people about this moment in time, where depending how you look at things, you could think things are glass half full or glass half empty, but it is certainly a moment in time where perhaps we thought that we'd been working really hard on sustainability and social justice, and that we might be just getting there, and then ba-bam, the big pushback hit. And so right now, we need to dig in more than ever at a time where, you know, we might be a little bit tired because we might be working on this for all our careers already. We might be feeling that there's so much political pushback and, you know, wider, you know, social movements pushback, and at a time when the window for acting on climate change is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. So it can, all the various wonderful, you know, collaborations that Futerra is a part of. I was with the Systemic Climate Action Collaborative in a retreat, and everyone was talking about this, you know, now we have to dig in, but we're so knackered and the budgets are cut and the teams are shrinking, and it struck me that it's a little bit like when you've laboured and you're more knackered than you could ever have possibly thought you could be, and then you get handed the baby. And it's like, oh, what, now? I've got to raise the, but I'm really tired. I've got to raise the baby now. And I thought it was a kind of a good metaphor for where we are now in sustainability, that we've set the big goals, we've done all the net zero targets, and that was hard work, but it was still a little bit, in some ways, hypothetical. Then the pushback happened, ESG pushback, etc. And now we do have the shrinking teams and cut budgets at a time when the implementation really starts. But the flip side, the positive side, I wanted to bring as well, is that in raising that baby, you discover exponential reserves of love and resilience that you would never have thought would be inside yourself. And so I think that's the moment I think that might be the moment we're in now, where we have to dig in deeper, but support each other on being able to keep going on this critical work that we all do as solutionists. So this is what this session is about. For parents and non-parents, a moment to perhaps reflect a little bit about where we are as a community and discuss a little bit about how we can help each other out, how we can keep each other moving forward. As I say, it's a bit different to anything we've done at Solutions House before, so thank you so much, Fatu and Rachel, for joining us on this. And Fatu, can I start with you? And we met Fatu while holding her son at New York Solutions House in New York Climate Week. So Fatu, can you share with us a little bit about what it feels like for you right now, how the work feels, what that holding the baby moment feels like?
Thanks so much, Lucy, for the invitation. And as you've mentioned, this is really a very important yet timely conversation, because we are now living in a world where the climate crisis is something that we are no longer preparing for. It's something that is actually disrupting our daily lives and something that is actually happening now. So when we are talking about parenting the future and preparing for the future is actually now here with us, and we're seeing how it continues to impact people, lives, and livelihoods. I am from the Gambia and from Banjul, which is the capital city. But Banjul is now a city that is actually at risk of rise in sea level. And the city will actually get inundated under a 1 meter sea level rise. So that means a home to thousands of people will actually be destroyed as a result of the climate crisis. So for people like us, it's no longer about preparing, it's about how do we make sure we are building our resilience. And I also come from a farming family. My father is a farmer. My mom used to sell horticultural produce, but actually had to stop because of the impact of climate change on agricultural yields, making it difficult for her to continue selling her produce. And every single time I have a conversation with my father, he asks me, when are you guys going to solve the climate crisis? Because you're always talking about it. Honestly, like he always tells me, like right now, my team is on the ground doing a nationwide activity, engaging schools to actually set up greening eco clubs and green clubs. But whenever I like interact with my father, he was like, you people are always in panels, you're talking about climate change. When are you going to solve it? Because I am no longer getting like the produce that I used to get. My dad used to get like bags of maize and other cereals, but now it's actually quite limited. And that is the same for many people in the Gambia, in Senegal, and other regions in Africa. For example, about 70% of our population in Gambia, in the rural population, actually depend on agriculture. So we are no longer talking about how we are preparing. We should be talking about how do we make sure we are holding the baby to deliver concrete actions. And for me, as a young person that has been in the space for about a decade already, starting from zero to now where we are, holding the baby for me means carrying an ecosystem of young people, youth-led environmental organizations, feminist-led environmental organizations, especially in the Global South and particularly in Africa, to make sure that at least we continue the activism we do, but also the fact that there is so much responsibility put on us to solve the crisis that we've actually never actually caused as young people. So when I started Clean Out Gambia, about a few years ago, I was actually a student. Started the organization from zero money, going to school, mobilizing so many young people that did not even know at the time what was happening was climate change in our country. So having to start from scratch with zero funding, where government wasn't willing to work with young people because they think young people do not bring anything to the table. Having to actually mobilize these young people to travel across the length and breadth of the country, creating awareness about climate issues, mobilizing other young people to join the advocacy and also engage other people. This is what it means to me for holding the baby, inspiring young people, inspiring feminists across the continent to actually get involved in the climate space, even though it's exhausting because we started from zero and now we are able to impact lives. So far, for instance, Clean Out Gambia, we have planted over 35,000 trees across the country, planting 14,000 trees across the Banjul Beach, because Banjul Beach, thank you, yeah. So holding the baby is like that, starting from nothing to actually getting to doing more for people and for communities. So it's exhausting because sometimes you do work, you face a lot of backlash, you are burnt out, there's so much pressure, there is so much criticism for the work that you do, but we have to do it because if we don't do it, who does it? Because people like us, we have no choice. Our families are impacted. Our communities are impacted, so we have to do the work, either we like it or not. So it's about making sure that we continue doing the work that we do, even though all the backlash comes in, all the struggles, all the stress comes out, and sometimes you feel hopeless that there isn't much that's been done because you go to climate negotiations, we continue to talk about climate financing, the 100 billion climate financing, we talk about loss and damage, we talk about adaptation, we talk about the gender action plan, we talk about indigenous representation, among others, but there isn't much progress. So for me, even with all those things, it's about making sure we are persevering. We are actually behind the scene, pushing for more action. So holding the baby for me is something that looks like that for me.
Thank you for sharing that. I love how you, we've got a round of applause about the amount of trees planted, but how you linked as well to the feminist movement, which is such, I think, a powerful unlock. Can I just ask a follow-up question? I love that you shared the story about your dad saying, come on, what keeps you going? So you've spoken about some of the things you've already achieved. Is it your dad saying, well, come on, tick, 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 time is coming? What keeps you going in these times?
Yep, definitely what keeps me going, first of all, is when I am in spaces like this, or when I am in communities, like schools, with villages, with local groups mobilizing people, and then all of a sudden I see a very young person comes to me and tell me, oh, I am really inspired by the work you do. I didn't know anything about climate change, or I didn't actually think young people could actually make so much impact, but then you have inspired me to get involved in the climate space. I was one of the first young people in the Gambia, especially like a woman, to actually be involved in the climate space. Like if you check, for instance, like if you Google and say climate activists in Gambia, and it's like my name will pop up like on the top, for instance. So it's not like climate-related activism was something that's really young people in the Gambia and other parts of Africa are actually into. But the fact that whenever we are in communities, I have one or two people come to me and say, you really inspired me to actually do these activities in my community. It really inspires me and shows that the work that we're doing actually has impact, because we're at least inspiring one or two people to replicate the work that we're doing in their communities. And through the Street Climate Fellowship that we've actually started 3 years ago, where we actually are planning to train and mentor 1,000 young women in the Gambia to actually be involved in the climate space and lead solutions. We've seen how these young women and girls are now really like going far and beyond to really be able to do even more than what I am doing, because some of them are now like journalists and they are focused on environmental journalism. Some of them are actually pursuing their master's degree in environmental sciences, and some of them are actually in their communities really be like amplifying the work that we're doing. So these are things that really inspires me, that even with everything that is going on, without so many government support or strategic partnership, but the fact that we continue to see young people really inspired and going to do more is something that really keeps me going, and understanding that the fact that we are making impact is something that's really inspiring and motivating.
Yeah. Another round of applause. Thank you. And it's funny, isn't it? As change makers, you can set up all the structures, but sometimes you don't know the conversation you might have with someone, who then might have a conversation with someone else that could actually, set up something that could, change enormous things. So, which is, again, some of the difficulties that we find is sometimes where to focus and where to put our energy. So, Rachel, can I turn to you? I know this is something you think about a lot and have been having lots of conversations with the community. What's your kind of, what's your 3 a.m., no, what's your moment at the moment? What's holding the baby looking like for you, and what keeps you going?
Sure. I mean, I don't quite know how I follow that. Amazing. Maybe I can speak to it a little bit from a more specific industry perspective, working within sustainable fashion specifically. And then also maybe a little bit around sort of me as an individual career-wise, because I think that's a really big part of this conversation as well. It's like how we all find the motivation individually to keep going and to find our space within it. I mean, from an industry perspective, and this actually goes way beyond fashion, but, we are obviously in an incredibly tough time right now with, regulatory rollbacks in a massive way. Team cuts left, right and centre. I've just been at an event all morning, the Future Fabrics Expo, for those from the industry that know it, that also runs during Climate Week over near the O2, and the sort of overall feeling from a lot of people, or like the sentence people saying, it's like, oh, well, it's just me and the team now, or it's me and one other, and, just the amount of team cuts that have been happening, and everybody's just shouldering it all and sort of being like, but we'll carry on and we'll make it happen, because you've got no choice but to do so. And I think there is just a very downbeat mood and a lot of uncertainty that's kind of flowing around, everything. I mean, the amount of chat about tariffs when you work in this industry as well is rather overwhelming at the moment. And I think that just sets the scene for like holding the baby now feels really, really tough. And I know, we are talking about solutions here, but there is that moment of like, can you walk out of this space feeling that it's okay when things are very pessimistic? And actually, you used the word paralysis, and that was another one that I was talking with somebody about this morning, is like, it's very easy to feel incredibly paralyzed right now and be like, what can I do that actually drives any change whatsoever, because nothing's cutting through. And actually, the person I was talking to this morning was being like, we can't wait in this, let's call it 4 years maybe, we can't sit still for 4 years and wait. There isn't time to wait for 4 years, so we can't be paralyzed. So my holding the baby, I think, looks like saying, what is it as a result within that context that I can personally do? So I made a few decisions a few years ago, which probably came from a place of privilege to be able to say no to things, first of all. And I decided that I needed to just say yes to pieces of work. I was a consultant at the time that I believed would genuinely contribute in some way, shape or form to systems change. And as I say, that kind of came from a place of, a luxury to be able to say, this is what I do want to do and this is what I don't want to do. And I had the security to be able to do so, I suppose. But it's been my sort of guiding light through now to say, is this going to do that or not? Now, don't get me wrong, I spend a lot of time doing a lot of bureaucracy and paper pushing alongside, inevitably. But I think, ultimately with all of it, there is a lot of emotional labour, as you sort of say, with that analogy or the metaphor of holding the baby. There's a lot that's tied into that. It's very existential in this space right now, which is really, really tough. But I think if we don't look at it through that lens of what individually can I achieve with it all, then that's really, really hard. And I say that also, this is called parenting the future, and also at the same time as being a parent. All three of us are parents on here. And I sit there and I think, I've got a parent on the one hand, and I've got to do this work on the other hand, and the work doesn't pay very much because we're in sustainability, let's face it. Mm-hmm. And I'm really, really tired, and my kids are still expecting me to do all of these things. And then you think, what's the point? Like, what actually, and that's what I mean about it being existential. But at the same point, same with parenting, you still get up every day and get them through the day because you have to, and because you care enough that you want to drive that change. So I think for me, it's a bit of all of it. But I'm ultimately a glass half full person, even if it doesn't necessarily always feel like that at the moment. So I think you have to persevere.
Well, and also you need to look at the problems long enough to find the solutions from them. And what keeps you going? You said actually that whole looking at what you do with your career, but is there anything else mentally that keeps you going?
Yeah, I'll echo what Fatou said there, in terms of seeing other people in the space. I do mentoring sessions once a month with a group of young people, which I just sort of opened up very organically through LinkedIn, actually, in the first instance, because it came from a place of recognising that the young people that were approaching me and asking me questions about working in this space often had the same questions. And actually I recognised that maybe it wasn't about trying to fit in lots and lots of 15-minute conversations and feeling like you're constantly not being available for people, wanting to offer more to people. And so I set up group conversations with people. And honestly, it's the most rewarding thing I do every month. It's just a group of young people who now, every time I go to events, one of them is sat in the front row here, every time I go to events now, come up to me and be like, I was in one of your sessions and now I'm working at such and such and now I've jumped here. And just seeing these people in the space and also hearing how much they care. There was an amazing conversation I had a couple of months ago with one person who was based in the US market, was just finishing her MBA, and she just said, I just don't know what to do. She's like, I just don't know whether I should bother. Like, I'm in the US, obviously with the current administration, everything that's happening, this was earlier in the year. She's like, just what's the point? Do you think I should actually go and try and get a job in this space? Like, should I actually go and try and drive change? And I was like, oh my God, how do I answer this? Like, I don't know. And then I thought about it and I thought, well, actually there's only one answer here. And I just said to her, I was like, it really comes down to how much you care. I was like, if you don't care enough, you could, with an MBA, there's a million jobs out there that you could go and get and make a load of money and contribute in a completely different way. It's like, but if you actually want to drive change, you have to care. And she just turned around and she was like, oh yeah, no, I massively care, 100% I'm going to be in the space. And I was like, well, there you go then. And that was the thing that I realised united these calls with these young people, is just that they all care so passionately. And it's reinvigorating because it's very easy to feel very jaded when you've been doing it for a long time, to hear people coming into this space and wanting to drive change and obviously really doing it on the ground as well. And I think, so for me, it's supporting those people into the spaces and helping them connect with those that will help them also do it.
That's your office hours thing.
It's my
on
office
LinkedIn.
hours,
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
wonderful. So round of applause for that, I think. All right, now we're going to turn it over to you, because this is about us, the community. So we're going to do this quite fast and furious, because otherwise we could just spend the next 3 days doing this, I think. So it's either tiny or big, so we're doing tiny. Can you please put yourselves in twos, or if it needs to be threes, and turn to each other and have a quick conversation around what's your 3 a.m. moment, or what are you holding which is invisible, or what's the thing that's helping you move from intention to action. So a few things you could consider but a kind of a moment to reflect yourself on what it's like and how you're kind of getting the energy to work through this moment. So I'll give you about maybe 3 minutes or so please do go. So if you want to just stick a hand up so a microphone can come to you. If anyone would like to share what that conversation was, or what keeps you going, or what's difficult right now, we're here for you. Oh, we got one. Thank you.
Hi. We talked about self-preservation in this moment and only being able to do what you can do. There are only 8 hours in the day. And when you have other responsibilities, you have to look after yourself, but it can be frustrating, as Rachel said, in those times where you're feeling like the only person and, your team has shrunk, there's less budget, and you're trying to hold everything, but just a bit of self-care to say, there's only so much I can do in the day. It's only me, and just, the kind of self-acceptance and acceptance of the situation is what we talked about.
I love that, because the work is always there. It's not like you ever finish it, right, in a day. So to recognise that it'll be waiting for us tomorrow as well. And Rachel, Fatu, I don't know if there's anything you want to comment on, or if you want to take another reflection and then over to you two. Yeah, we've got someone here. We've got 2 people here.
I think what I liked about our conversation is that there was some positivity in it, which was great, coming from this end. On this end, a bit more frustrated, because I feel like you see the different levels of experience. I feel like my baby is crying, and I don't know why it's crying. So from the perspective of a young person who comes from sustainability background, purely studied sustainability in one of the first undergraduate courses on it, I am now approaching the job market knowing that I want to learn more, that I want to keep going and learn some technical skills coming from the more high level strategy. And I'm just what do you need from us? So I'm looking at the baby and I'm like, you're crying, but what do you need from me? I'm here, I can help you, but
Tell me.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to share something.
Such a good analogy.
It was my age, I think. I was a bit more vibey and positive. But I think, it was a really interesting conversation. I think what you're getting to is maybe a seemingly lack of direction that you could be at this early stage of your career. You're at the start of the journey, and you can go anywhere and do anything. As a smart woman. But I think so maybe it's the direction is what you're feeling a little bit of a lack of. Like when you say, what are you crying for? What do you want me to do?
Thank you. Wonderful. Anyone else?
The analogy keeps on giving.
Yeah, it keeps on giving. Did you want to? Sure. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We were inspired by, obviously, your initial panel, and we had a very deep dive into the power of not just mentoring, but maybe just hearing others, and especially when you're feeling a little bit low, don't give up, because if not me, then who? If not us, then whom? Same question anyway, just phrased differently. But the point is, we're very fortunate by being women and having this level of education, and if we drop the ball, then we cannot be upset that someone else is not picking it up again. So these are the environments where we get inspired, and we both highly commented on the fact that some individuals have inspired us throughout our lives without even realizing that they were inspiring us, and those voices, those sentences then resonated into our hearts and our minds for years to come. So if we do drop the ball a little bit, find someone else that can help you pick it up and keep pushing forward, because there is no time to lose.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we can do a bit more of a round in a moment, but I wonder, can I turn to you, Fatu, I'll start with you and say, that was a great kind of segue into, do you, as a community, and obviously we're a big community now, many of us working, many countries around the world, lots of different interconnected issues, but is there something that, I would just love to open up a conversation around, what do we need? Is it the kind of the mentoring, the role models? Is there something you can see that is going to help us to kind of keep going in this moment? We'd just love to hear any perspective you have on that.
Yep, definitely. It's really interesting because I was sitting in one of the groups, and it was really interesting just hearing what really keeps them going, and also from the rest of the participants sharing their reflections. And for me, I think what we need to do more is to build solidarity, because we are going through a lot. The world is going through a lot. And as Rachel mentioned, it's actually really difficult to remain optimistic in spaces that actually, are very pessimistic, because there isn't much progress. But I think for me, what will help us keep going or moving is to really see how we could build more solidarity and be there for each other, be our brothers, our sisters' keeper, because she has rightly mentioned it. I mean, if we're not picking things up, then who will? So if you are feeling like you can't keep up, or you need time to decompress, there should be someone else to pick up things, because things need to get rolling. We're seeing what is happening around the world. Governments could just sit one day and say, we are no longer a party to the Paris Agreement. We are no longer financing or committing to the finance that we actually made a few years ago. So they could just sit and back out from commitments which actually could be very disastrous. We actually are seeing billionaires, we are seeing the elites actually really spending on things that are very harmful and damaging to our environment. So it's about us people really building more solidarity and actually taking more collective action, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure there's transparency in the space. We need to make sure there's accountability in the space. And we need to make sure there's political will in the space. And these things cannot happen if we are not coming together to make sure that we are calling out these things that are actually happening and making sure that there is more action. Because in as much as things are actually very pessimistic, in as much as things are not progressing as we want to, we need to make sure we are doing things for the future, because we are literally parenting now the future. You sit around, if you check how many people actually have kids or children, it will be many people in the room. So it's actually really making sure that the solidarity we are building is for the future that we actually have to protect, because it's the future. They are not contributing to the climate crisis. They are not contributing to the problems. So if we are not really holding the future and make sure we are guiding to make sure there is action, there is implementation, then it becomes difficult. So I think solidarity will be very helpful, and making sure we are strengthening the movement that we already have, to make sure we are bringing other people on board and getting other people to really make sure we are improving things.
Yes,
really.
I love that. Thank you. And what I heard from you and from others was also to not be shy or afraid about asking for help. That, I love that thing that we are in a position where we can take action, but when we feel tired and there's enough time for today, whatever it may be, we can ask for help. We can absolutely ask for help.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, I wouldn't say sad, but then the thing is, in the space that we're in, if you're born out or if you're tired, people tell you, oh, you're a strong, independent woman. Yeah. So it's as a strong, independent woman, you should never be tired. You should always be on the go. And that's not the reality. No. And as much as we're a strong, independent women or men, we need to also sit back sometimes and then take time for ourselves, reflect, and actually be able to recuperate and get back to the field, because it's not every time we have the same 100% energy to do work. So how do we make sure we stop the narrative of saying people when they're tired or they need some time to tell them, oh, you're so bold, you're so strong, you're so independent, and it makes you feel guilty when you need to take time for yourself.
You need to take a break and just say that's enough. Oh gosh, you reminded me that something that was going there. Yeah, because if you set the bar too high, or it's a form of what has always been done, which is you put people on a pedestal, and then that's not reality, basically. Yeah. So to be able to recognise that we're all humans with all our foibles, keeping going on this.
Because I remember. The first time I actually attended, my son, because I've been attending the climate negotiations as a gender negotiator and climate education negotiator. But then my son actually attended COP27 at 3 weeks old, right after giving birth.
The puppet is here as well.
And he's here. So I was in negotiation rooms with a baby that was 3 weeks old, so tiny, you wouldn't even see there was a baby. I wish I had a photo, I'll show you. You wouldn't even see there was a baby here with me. And then it really actually becomes really difficult, because then people will tell you, oh, you are a mom, you are a climate, you're doing work on the ground, and then, you're taking care of your child. People don't even know what I'm going through at night when my son is refusing to sleep. and I'm trying to get sleep because I have been on the go the whole morning and the afternoon, and I now need to sleep. And my son is like, no, you can't sleep. And then I have to like be crying with him, please, I need to sleep, you should sleep, and all those things. So these are moments or things that we really don't talk about because we don't know what's happening behind the scene. But in the outside, people will think, oh, you are really great. I don't know how you do it. But let's go behind the scene. Then you will know how we are doing it. And that way, at least you will really understand the realities of people that are in the climate space, what they go through behind the scene, the backlash that they face, and how they really just have to always hold it and then hold forth and make sure that in the outside we're showing people that we are really strong, and then there's nothing that is actually stopping us. And this is something that we need to talk about more. And that's why I'm telling you, solidarity and spaces like this is very important, because in the conventional space we just have panel discussions and we just sit and talk about the policies, we talk about the actions, but we fail to talk about what we are going through. And then that makes it very difficult because then everyone is holding really strong faces and strong forth, and we fail to talk about what's behind the scene. And you cannot really cook things well, you cannot really parent the future well without really talking about the midnight struggles, the morning struggles, and all the like the morning sicknesses and all those things that we go through.
And then just when you think, oh, I've woken up again and my kids are older, then it's like, oh God, I've hit the perimenopause. Anyway, I'm so pleased we're doing this panel. Rachel.
So are we.
Rachel, I know, again, you spent some time thinking about this. So what is it that you think we need in order to be able to keep going, support each other?
I mean, I love what you've just said, and I think maybe to build on the piece about solidarity, I think it's really, really important, men and women, we don't give ourselves the grace of recognizing when we need to take a step back. I had to take time off at the beginning of this year. I was in hospital, physical illness. I'm now fine. But I did have to take time out of work, and it was enforced. It was really scary. And I was like, oh my God, what about my projects? Oh my God, what about my team? Oh my God, like, all of these things. Like, how are they going to cope without me? And like, how is this work going to progress? Mm-hmm. And you take time out and you come back and you're like, oh, it's fine. Like, it's fine. The projects are still continuing. The team's absolutely fine. My inbox is a mess, but actually I'm just going to delete most of these emails because it's been like 8 weeks. And do you know what? It was the most eye-opening thing to just realise that it's absolutely fine to take a break. And although it wasn't at all related to the work, the reason why I had to take the time off, what I realised is how many people do have to take time off because of the work, and they're really ashamed about that fact. And as a result, they don't, and then they get to a point where they get so sick they have to. And so I wrote about it as part of the office hours that I do. I have a Substack, and I wrote about why it's okay to step back when you need to, and just wrote about all of the things that were still okay when I came back to it, and actually opening up that conversation was incredibly eye-opening, of people just saying, do you know what, thanks, like that's really good to know that it's okay to just take time out. And for young people as well, I was like, just, do you know what, if you're really struggling and you can financially afford to do it, just take a month, just go and travel for a month, go and do something completely different that enables you to reset and find who you are and stop. And then my other version of this on a sort of smaller level, like a day-to-day basis, my best friend is a well-known BBC journalist, Emma Barnett, who some of you may know, talks a lot about women's health. And she has written a book recently called Maternity Service, and it's all about how maternity leave needs to be rebranded, because actually it's a tour of duty, it's a service that we're doing for our future children. It's very powerful. I'd highly recommend you read it, whether you're in a maternity leave, pre, during or post, in any form or another. But within it, she talks at one moment about this notion called sips of selfhood. And the idea is that when you're in early motherhood, you completely lose who you are. It's really easy to be like, oh my God, like what is happening to me with this child when I'm at climate negotiations, obviously like we all are with our babies. And she talks about this idea that if you can get just a tiny sip of selfhood, just something for one moment that reminds you of who you are. So it might be that, you know, it's just taking a nap. It might be that you're popping into a museum, or maybe it's having coffee with a friend, like just something that takes you out of that like absolute like wild moment of early parenting. And I stopped and thought about it a lot, and I thought, you know what, this work is really like that as well. It's so easy to be stuck in the day-to-day. I mean, the amount of weeks where I'm just at my desk writing funding documents and doing paperwork and doing the inbox and on team calls, and I'm like, I haven't touched any fabric that's not obviously what I'm wearing. for ages, given that I work in fashion. I haven't been to a field. I haven't met a garment worker, like all of these things. And so I was like, I wrote a piece around what are each of our own sips of sustainability selfhood. So what can I do just for a moment to remind myself of why I'm in this work and why I care about it? And I had an incredible experience where I got to go and volunteer on a biodynamic farm recently, which the model Arizona Muse organised. She has a charity called Dirt, which is all about soil regeneration. And we just went and planted flowers for the afternoon that will become the natural dye for a fashion brand, ultimately. And honestly, it was the most joyous thing. I was like, this is incredible. I've learned so much about farming for the afternoon. And sorry, you probably know lots coming from agriculture already, but for me, it was really special and a really important reminder of like, actually all of this comes back to the soil. And just having that time out for an afternoon to just do something completely different and remind myself why I love this work. And so again, you know, it could be anything within this space. I was like, we talk about the amount of textile waste in Cantamanto Market in Ghana all of the time. I was like, let's just go into we've all got local charity shops, just go in and speak to the people that are volunteering there, ask them what happens to the clothes, like just understand it more. Or actually, even better, just spend time doing things with your hands, like repairing something, making something, all of these things that are part of who we are culturally, historically, that we've forgotten about, but all tie into this world of why we're doing this work and why we care. So yeah, sips of selfhood, not for motherhood, but for sustainability, I thought was also really valuable.
I do think anything that can give an energy lift is very important at the moment. And certainly if I look back over my career and Have You Chair has been at various stages and now the non-profit as well, there's been and it's almost, you never know where that energy is going to come from. Sometimes you're like, all right, well, set up a new team on this or develop a new product there, and it can sort of feel a bit like, And then other times, something happens in the ether and you get this like enormous, I think it's called flow, that guy who wrote the book, I always found it a bit annoying, but you get this enormous kind of well of energy. And I think, what is important now is that we are able to spend a little moment sometimes thinking about, I've still got to have to do all the admin, I've still got all that stuff to do, but what is it that I can do that, and perhaps it's what is it that only I can do, working with others, which is the bit that's, Dr. Ayanna Johnson talks about this amazing, your triple VEN, about work that gives you joy, work that is your skill set, and work that is purpose. So that might be something as well. I think that would be quite interesting for us to think about as we
And I think it's also with the energy piece, is like you can get big energy from small things, and it's recognizing that. Like I talk a lot about the need for, the peer-to-peer networking and the community side of things and getting things from other people. I'm the sort of person, I get a lot of energy from other people. But actually I recognize it's not necessarily always in big groups. Like, I love it when I go to like a big conference and I see everybody I know and it makes me feel really buzzy. But actually I love it when I've got two people in the industry who, one's a CEO and one is a journalist, and the two of them, the three of us go for dinner, and I always walk away so energized from it. Just like with a small dinner, that's it. And like actually it's just finding those things that make you feel like actually there's other people in this space that are also doing things that I align with or take something from, and B, just things that just make you feel inspired to keep going.
We're heading up against time. Fatou, I'd love to turn to you for a final thought or reflection. I can see you've been writing a couple of notes there. So whatever. My final point was going to be around, is there anything that we should be building together, like a peer-to-peer support system for that solidarity? Do we need some kind of campaign or platform, some new narratives out there? We're kind of out of time. We can do this over the coffee break as well. But if there's anything, Fatou, you'd love to do a call out around that solidarity piece and how we can all develop that, or just any final thoughts?
Yes. Time is always a problem in these kind of discussions. But few takeaways I actually got from the conversations that have happened, and to just reference what he shared, that we need to flip the narrative and we need to be more radical in our approach and the work we do, especially if we're not seeing lots of changes and lots of action. And as a young person, I continue to see how other young people in the African continent, but also globally, always together fighting for common good, whether it's fighting against capitalism, fighting against imperialism, ecocide, genocide, and all the problems that are happening around the world. One thing that I always continue to admire and really appreciate from young people is how there is this collective action and the solidarity and flipping the narrative, being really radical and calling out things as what it is. And I think this is really important for us to do, especially in the climate space. I know it's difficult sometimes because of what is happening, but it's really important we really be more bold and more radical and really call out things as what it is. Because if we are not doing that, then it makes it difficult, because people that actually do not have voices to actually be in platforms like this do not get to share their stories, do not get to share what they are facing and the realities that are actually on the ground. I get the opportunity to really interact with, for instance, farmers across the Gambia and beyond, where I sit with them and they'll tell me their problems and the challenges that they face in terms of getting organic fertilizers, in terms of getting funding, or just in terms of the challenges that they continue to face in the climate space. But I get this opportunity and I come to platforms like this and I share their stories. I go to other spaces where, for instance, indigenous group as well as women that are in the global south do not have opportunities to actually get visas, to get flight or to get train tickets, to actually be in platforms like this to share their stories. So how do we make sure we are amplifying the voices of the most marginalized and vulnerable groups in conversations like this? And one of the ways we have to do it is to be bold and to be radical and to say things as they are. Because if we don't do that, the problems are going to face our leaders, they're going to continue to happen, our leaders are they're going to continue to do what they are doing, especially if it is not something that's very beneficial for the environment, for the future, and even for the present. So these are really important things. And another thing that I wanted to share and wrap up with is, please fund the implementers. It's important that we're funding the innovators, but fund the implementers. It's really difficult for funding to actually be given to implementers. And let's be honest, most of the time, our governments are not on the ground, especially in the remote areas of these countries. It is the implementers that are actually risking, they're like traveling across the length and breadth of countries and communities to really understand the realities of people, to really engage directly with these people and with these communities, and really be able to make sure they're bringing funding to support these communities. But it's really difficult. Every single time you're applying for funding, they are increasing or they're changing the requirements. You need to bring this document, you need to bring that document, you have to pass through so many vettings, which is something sometimes very unnecessary, because you make it difficult and demotivate people, especially the implementers, to really seek fundings. So how do we make sure we're building strategic and long-term funding and partnerships between the funders and the implementers, so that we can continue to engage in a long-term projects and just not projects that phase out after 3 months or 4 months, because these things are not helpful. At the end of the day, it is these implementers that will continue to implement, regardless of funding, regardless of resources. So let us really work better with them, let us support them, but most especially when they need to rest, let's give them the space to rest and stop shaming them.
Yeah, 100%. I want to wrap up this panel with an enormous thanks to both of you for joining this. I feel that this has been one of these conversations which, when we were talking earlier about, you never know sometimes what will change something. I feel we've covered to build the analogy, we've covered so much ground here, from the kind of the big to the small, from here to overseas. And I just want to say thank you. It's been the most brilliant. I've taken so much from it. I hope that you have too. Love to see that you kind of got a chance to share with each other as well. So thank you so much.